I'm with Siemens. I've been with Siemens about 9 years, from Utah, graduated from the University of Utah. And most of my background is, so I'm a mechanical engineer by education. Most of my background has been inside the building envelope. So I'm much more educated on a smart building than a smart city, but it's something that I'm passionate about, I'm learning about. And so what I'm presenting today is really just kind of Siemens' vision for what a smart city is. Feel free to stop me at any point if there's something that catches your interest that you'd like to know more about, and hopefully I know more about it. If not, I can probably connect you to somebody who does. So really quick intro. That was the intro for me. There we go. So Siemens Global Corporation. So we're doing a lot of work in smart cities, both here in the U.S. as well as around the world. It's about an $80 billion company, 350,000 employees worldwide. They call us the Americas. Really, it's most of the United States. We account for probably anywhere from 25 to 30%, depending on the year. These numbers are all from like 2016. Siemens has a really diverse business that we do all sorts of stuff. People are probably familiar with, the healthcare type things, which are, you're seeing X-rays, MRIs, all CTs, all those kind of things. They also build the trax trains downtown are a Siemens product. But really, where we play in the smart cities and connected development space is really those center three tiles, which we call it our Siemens Smart Infrastructure Group. So we've got the piece that I'm the most familiar with and that I've done most of my work with, which would be the energy management, building technologies. And that's all the stuff that really is lying within a building envelope. So it's building automation systems, fire and life safety systems, all the electrical gear, grid, all those sorts of things. And then there's our mobility business as well, which, as I'm sure anybody who's tried to build a city, or especially a smart city, that's really where I was going to say the rubber hits the road, but less of a metaphor, more of an actual thing, the rubber hitting the road. But trying to figure out those first and last mile solutions, trying to figure out where people are going to park, how you're going to make sure the traffic flows, all that sort of stuff. So that's also another business that Siemens is very strong in. So, we've got probably, 40 to 50 people in here. And I think if I asked anybody in here, hey, what's a smart city? Everybody probably has an opinion. They're all probably just a little bit different. So really the way that we like to look at smart cities at Siemens is generally what you're trying to do is you're trying to solve a problem, right? What's the problem that you're trying to solve, or problems that you're trying to solve with a smart city? The big ones, the ones that you hear from all of everyone, everyone wants a live, work, play environment. Sometimes people say live, work, play, learn, where everything is all together. Some people are talking about making an environmental impact. People are talking about a group that we're working with here in Salt Lake. One of their big drivers is, okay, we've got one of the best education systems in the state of Utah, and we're losing a lot of that talent. They come out of school and they leave Utah, and so all that time and money and effort that's been invested into educating these people, they're leaving. So how do we keep them here? How do we, whatever it is that they're leaving for, whether it's a different job, whether it's the downtown scene that they want, how do we bring that here so that we retain all of that talent? And so that's kind of the thing. There's a myriad of problems that people are trying to solve with a smart city. So this is kind of how we look at it is, okay, there's this development of the future. It's got to be smart. I think everybody understands what that means. It's in here today. It's got to be resilient. And so whether that's from an infrastructure standpoint, you're not going to have downtime of systems, and then it's got to be sustainable. And then we break those down into a couple of different systems. So there's infrastructure. I know there's a lot of people from cities, from chambers of commerce, and this is probably the stuff that keeps you up at night. As cities expand, as there are more people in any geographic area, these are the things that aren't easily scalable. So they're things that you've got to think about long beforehand and plan for. Okay, this is kind of our max use this area is ever going to have. and these things have to be planned ahead. It's going to be pretty difficult to put more water, sewer, all that sort of stuff when a development's already built out. The next layer, these are things that are maybe a little bit easier replaceable, that maybe don't have the same life. And this is the actual buildings that are on there and the systems that are within those buildings. Data analytics. When I talk about data analytics, so you build a smart development, you build a smart building, whatever it is, how do you keep it smart? Because I think that's probably something that anybody who's been in the industry, in the building industry, runs into. It's like you build something, it's state of the art when you build it, and it's state of the art when you design it. By the time you finish building it, it's no longer state of the art. And how do you keep it running efficiently, and how do you keep it up to date? And that really drives that last bullet point, or that top column, the edge devices. So these are all of your IoT devices. These are all of your, whether it's sensors, whether it's displays, all those sort of things. And so that's kind of how we like to break it out, kind of thinking in different layers of how the development's going to come together. Another one, this is kind of so that you're thinking about everything that's going into the development. So smart services. So I think this is something particularly along the lines of that group I was talking about retaining talent, keeping educated people here. I think for those groups, and it all depends on your definition. I'm technically a millennial if you're looking at the right chart. I was born in 1980, but they talk about, okay, how are we going to keep these people? How do we want these people to keep these people here? That's how they want to interact with their surroundings. And so a lot of this is just coming up with a plan, an app, a website, being able to monitor, see what's going on, whether you've got after the developments telling you events that are going to happen there. Connect to healthcare, whether that's remote healthcare, whether that's on-site healthcare, is a big thing. The other thing is that a trend that's happened around the country, they build these smart cities thinking, oh, we're going to do this to attract millennials, right? And what they're seeing as a pretty significant trend is it's also attracting empty nesters, baby boomers. It turns out they want a lot of the same services, a lot of the same connectivity that the millennials do, and so it's hitting different demographics. And obviously for that demographic, connected healthcare, having access to those things within their community is a much bigger piece. And then smart mobility. I talked a little bit about it, but it depends on where you're building, right? So one of the slides I have on here is it's Sterling Ranch. It was a 6,400 acre greenfield development, right? They've got 10 square miles that they can build. So a situation like that, parking's not as big of a deal. Everybody can be a 2-car household. It's fine. Everybody's going to be in their own separate house. But if you're talking about building something in downtown Salt Lake City, or you're talking about the prison redevelopment project, right? That's out there, space is at a premium. And so it's talking about, okay, so how do you make it so that everybody can get to and from where they want to go without dedicating huge amounts of time and resource to parking, to traffic management? How do we make it so that this 2-car household can be a 1-car household because of the services that are available? This is really where Siemens plays a huge role. I'm particularly super interested in smart energy, right? So when I think of smart energy, I think of distributed energy systems, microgrids, battery storage, those kind of things that really play into resiliency of a development or a city. And so I want to talk a little bit about microgrids. So Siemens has deployed a couple of projects, one of which was it was in New York, where all these people everybody's got solar panels, everybody's got whatever, they're generating their own energy, but then it's going back into the grid, they're selling it back to the utility, and then somebody else, may well be their next door neighbor, is buying it back from the utility. And so just from an economic standpoint, right, there's a middleman that doesn't necessarily have to be there. And then also from just a sustainability standpoint, there's line losses. You lose some of that energy anytime it has to go out into the grid and then back in from the grid. On-site generation is one thing, on-site storage is another. I know there's probably a lot of people in this room that have solar panels on their house, right? And it's great, and you have this excess energy, but again, you've got to kick it out of the grid if there's on-site battery storage, which I'd really like to do on my house. I don't think it's really economically viable yet on the individual level, but if you can store that energy on site, you're generating energy all day. Maybe you're not home, so you're really not using it, but then when you get home, AC kicks on, you start cooking, you whatever, you can use the energy you generated as opposed to having to kick it back out the grid, suck it back from the grid later. And then smart buildings. So Siemens does a ton with smart buildings, right? So we've made some recent acquisitions, but from a user interface standpoint, from a whether it's the HVAC control, whether it's the lighting control, whether it's occupancy, all that sort of stuff, and how that interacts and how you can turn a smart building and then deploy some of those same technologies, some of those same thoughts into a smart city for a smart development. This is something that Peter and I talked a little bit about before with those networks, thinking about, okay, it's all about use cases, and so it sounds like Ignite was trying to decide, okay, do we go on and build these networks, or do we figure out what the use cases are, and then roll those out so that everybody comes in and they build their own networks. There's a market driver behind it, which is obviously going to build things out a lot quicker than it would if somebody was just trying to take it all from the other end. So we've talked about, although it sounds like Utopia already has a model that's very similar to this, where you get in these developments, build their own infrastructure from a network standpoint, whether it's fiber, it's going to be fiber. But so they own that infrastructure, and then the ISPs come in and you have your choice, right? And the analogy that I've heard for that I was sharing with Peter earlier was, so it's the way that your internet currently works today is, imagine if the Postal Service and UPS and FedEx, they all had to build their own roads to deliver packages to your house, right? That's kind of how it works now. There are all these separate networks that somebody has deployed time, effort, resources, materials, whatever it is, to deploy these networks, that it's an unnecessary expense, and we're all paying that expense, right? That eventually that money comes out of our pockets. Other parts of this, real-time utility monitoring and billing, digital displays. It's another huge impact that we can have on sustainability. I don't know about you guys, I'm a nerd about this stuff. So I have it's a Nest thermostat in my house, right? And I probably look at it every other day to see, okay, how many hours did I run my heating or my air conditioning today? Or I'm looking at my water bill. There are studies that are out there that just having that visibility day to day into what you're doing can have the biggest impact on your behaviors and on conservation at an individual level. And so some of that stuff, there's a display in your house that says, hey, it's a screen that says, hey, yesterday you were 20% over whatever, we've normalized that for weather conditions. And it's like, I gotta yell at my kids again for adjusting the thermostat, right? But along all those things, if you just see your bill at the end of the month, you can't see where you could have made an impact, but if you can see it daily or real-time information, it can make a lot of difference in how people interact with their own systems within their homes. This is one, I think I told you guys, there are things that I know a lot about. This one I don't know as much about. But a lot of this stuff, it's, again, how people are interacting with their space. So whether it's access to spaces, whether it's using some of those joint resources, so especially if you're in development where space is a premium, it's like, okay, you want to be able to, you're in a house that's 12 or 1,500, a living space is 12 or 1,500 square feet, so 2,500, and the way that you can get people to do that is because they have a shared resource they can use, whether it's a movie room, whether it's outdoor space, whether it's whatever, and you can tie all of those things into an application on your phone that says, hey, I want to schedule this to use this, or I want to see how busy this is at this time, decide whether you're going to use it or not. There's also going to talk about wayfinding, but not really from a visitor wayfinding perspective. So it's in another of these slides. So public safety and security, this is huge. Obviously, there's a huge trend now where I think it's within the last 10 years or something, there are more people in the cities than there are in the suburbs, right? The more people that are in these spaces, the more impact there is if there's an event, if there's something that happens, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's an active shooter, whether it's whatever it is, and being able to make sure that you keep everybody safe in these situations is a huge consideration when you're dealing with these type of developments. So, for instance, one of the projects that we are doing work on currently in Colorado, Sterling Ranch, that I talked about earlier. So there's a component to that where we have smart street lighting that's out there. They all have Bluetooth low energy beacons on them, and it's all set up. So let's say there's let's say somebody has a heart attack. They call an ambulance. All of those lights can be programmed so that all the lights on the way that the ambulance is going to take, they're all going to turn red, right? The ambulance knows which way to go. Everybody that's driving on the street looks up. The light just turned red. I know I need to pull over. There's something going on. There's an ambulance coming, rather than having to wait for the lights in the rearview mirror. And it can be used for any of those sorts of situations. An active shooter, where kind of a mass notification to the community. They also have built-in speakers in the street lights. Wi-Fi connectivity that's part of the street lights, so that it's a real connected community. There's a lot of those sort of things that you can build in that, from a safety and a convenience standpoint, can make a big difference. So that was kind of the vision of Siemens, how we see connected developments, connected cities, what that means to us. This is kind of so there has to be some sort of brain, some sort of, all those analytics, like I said, how do you keep your development smart once you've built it smart. And what we use is kind of a front end as a monitoring, as the analytics, is this Gazebo CC, and we're tying in all of these things. So that A, you know what's going on, and B, you can let people know what's going on from that, all from a central hub. This is just kind of how we go to market in helping people that are looking to build a connected city, connected development. It's really just the process of, okay, how do we partner with a client to help them decide what's going to be best for their particular situation. And it all will come down into one of these, which we call a work breakdown structure. And if you look, there's a couple of different keys. So it's just a whole bunch of boxes, right? And there's pages and pages of these things that we'll go through with a client and say, okay, what is it that you're looking to do? What do you, and every time we sit down, I'm sure we have hundreds of these, they always add them in. And we try to prioritize them and categorize them to see what makes the most sense. So all the colored dots, like, all right, here's what it has an impact on. Infrastructure, we talked a little bit about medical office buildings, patient rooms. There's also, so on here, it's like, okay, there's obviously somebody who's building a development, yeah, they're doing it for other reasons, but part of it is they've got an investment that they're putting in there that they want to recoup. And so this is, the dollar signs, like how much revenue is this going to generate? Is it going to be traditional revenue, like rents, parking, things like that, or is it going to be kind of non-traditional revenue sources, digital displays and advertising, use of common areas, renting out to outside entities to use, and then also, what's the sustainability impact that can have on your development. But helping to decide, okay, what are the most important features? What's the problem you're trying to solve? What's the technology or the thought process that's gonna solve that for you? Now, that's just kind of zoomed in, but it's showing like, okay, so you're on your water metering. Obviously, that's an infrastructure thing. There is some revenue generation that's there, and it does have an environmental impact, but all those things are relatively low. On how using a different technology is going to impact those things, but it's just a good visual way to work through these things and decide what people want to do and how they want to do it. And that's what I have. So hopefully I didn't make anybody down with my comment or anything. Did anybody have anything that they had questions or anything they wanted to go back to? And okay.
As we, so a few of us in the room are with chambers of commerce and things, we work closely with our cities, and as we work with our cities, how best do we try to help them understand or get them to implement more of this community level and to see the importance of it and start allocating resources that maybe upgrade timeframes to get it going sooner? Obviously, we see it, the importance, our businesses get it. Our residents get it, but sometimes cities are a little bit slower on things.
So it's tough. We've talked about that. In particular, we've been talking to a couple of different groups that are working in the innovation district in downtown Salt Lake, which is kind of the southwest side, maybe 4th south to 9th south and 4th west to 8th, roughly that area, right? And it's everybody, so nobody owns all of it, right? So to your point, if it was a company that owned it, you go to them and you come up with a plan and it gets rolled out and they have complete control over it. And so we've had those discussions of how do you implement a standard amongst disparate groups of people that don't necessarily have, you know what I mean? Talk about managing people that don't report to you, basically.
Yeah.
And so really that's what it takes is for someone in the city who's a champion of that. Generally it's going to be like a sustainability officer or something like that says, hey, we need a standard, and so what is that standard? And so you could work through a similar structure to come up with a standard. It's not going to be as detailed because when a city builds a standard, they can't redo it every couple of, they're not going to redo it every year. So it's not going to say, okay, you have to use this widget or this, specific technology. But maybe building a roadmap of, okay, here are the standard kind of design standards that you're going to have to meet to when you're applying for a building permit or when you're making a major renovation or whatever it is. Personally, I haven't done that, so I haven't seen that really work. Where we really had the best success is where one person kind of has control, and the politics of it is obviously pretty complicated in that situation.
Hey, Taft, do you have any deployments in the city? What are they? Where are they? And who's your typical customer? Is it a city? Is it a developer in the city? And I'm also interested, do you guys have the spectrum? Where do you solve for? Do you solve on 2.5, 5.5, or are you doing this with proprietary spectrum?
So that's over my head, that question. The spectrum one. I don't know the answer to that. I know some smart people that probably know the answer to that. I'm not that guy. But as far as deployments here, we have a lot of smart technology that's maybe deployed in pockets in buildings. So the Salt Lake City Airport, when it opens up, is going to be pretty technologically advanced from a smart building standpoint. And that's a project that we're working on. The larger IHC hospitals around here have a lot of our technology that are deployed in them. From a development or smart city perspective, no, nothing here in Utah. The closest one would be that development in Colorado, Sterling Ranch, that's just kind of southwest of Denver.
And your customer there is the developer?
Is the developer, yeah. So basically, we're the technology partner where we're vetting. We've got a whole lab, an integration lab there that, whether the customer brings us something, whether we're doing our own research on the internet about some cool new technology, and then vetting those on how they're going to interoperate with everything else, the problems that are trying to be solved, or get the technologies that are out there, and basically building an app store that says, okay, these are the ones that have been vetted. You can choose from this menu of technologies, whether they be Siemens technologies or outside technologies that have been vetted, or if you see something that you like that you think would make a difference in your community, we can put that through that process and vet that.
Do you have any modular home customers? Builders of modular homes?
No, not that I know of. In the residential market, it's difficult if it's not as part of like a complete development. It's something that's hard to really scale to that small of a scale to make it work. So it almost has to be an overarching thing for it to make sense as part of the residential play.
And there's modular apartment complexes that are now being constructed, and they would be logical.
See, and that would make a lot of sense, and that's not something I'm familiar with, but I agree with you that that would make a lot of sense, especially from a standardization standpoint, and making sure that everything is connected and everything is, operating together. That would make a lot of sense.
So, it sounds like you're building smart cities already, or you're
Yeah.
already in the process. Do you have competitors, and what differentiates you from those competitors? And are you compatible, are you willing to work with those competitors, because otherwise it's just going to be a patchwork quilt?
So actually, that's a great question. So yes, there are competitors in the space, and they're all different. They're doing different things. So
Yeah.
Cisco obviously is a big player in smart cities, right? And Cisco, from a networking standpoint, they've done and seen more than Siemens is ever going to see. So we partner with Cisco for the networking portion. Although they are a competitor in some spaces where they want to be kind of the technology provider, we understand that that's not our wheelhouse. We hire Cisco to do those sort of things. Johnson Controls is a competitor mostly on maybe the smart building side, less so on the smart development side. And we've all got those bubble sheets, right, that say, here are our competitors, here are the things we do. We obviously checked all the boxes on our sheet, right? And then they've got their sheet that we're missing a couple of boxes that they have checked, and we didn't include those boxes on our sheet. But there are a lot of people out there that are doing different things. So I feel like the differentiation for Siemens is that we can be a complete solution. So we'll help you design the project, we'll help you build the project, which are things that we've traditionally done. We have the analytics to say, hey, here's how it's performing, here are changes that you can make, and then we can also be the partner to make those changes, right? Instead of, a lot of these are maybe an overlying analytics platform that you feed all your data in. So that would be like a SkySpark or something like that. You feed all your data in, they'll say, hey, here's a bunch of stuff you need to go fix, and then you have to go fix it. So yeah, I mean, there are a bunch of competitors, and I would say that the biggest differentiation would be that we can be super nuts.
Yeah. Thank you.
You mentioned traffic management a few times, and that's clearly an issue we have in Utah. Outside of just kind of traffic signal monitoring, have you seen other communities who've been able to integrate kind of a future mobility or smart city application to really solve a traffic issue or transportation issues?
I don't know. I really think that what the solution is going to be be automated vehicles, and automated vehicles that communicate to, not just to run themselves, but communicate to each other from a traffic management standpoint. I mean, how much of traffic is caused because somebody's looking down, they look up, hit their brakes, so there are 14 people behind them, hit their brakes, right? So a lot of those situations are going to be eliminated, but that's where I don't know that there are traffic engineers that have been doing this for decades that don't really have an answer for it outside of something like that. But I think that's going to be the difference. Is going to be autonomous vehicles that are communicating with each other, not just monitoring their surroundings, but communicating with each other in real time. And I really think that the technology has to get there from a car standpoint, and B, there's going to be a lot of edge computing that's going to have to happen to process that information and make it flow.
What you're describing, it sounds exciting, and it's great, but it's kind of have that right now, right? If you look at Waze, every vehicle has this that can tell you exactly what that smart vehicle is going to tell you. Wondering if there's not something.
But that's really just traffic monitoring at that point, right? It's not making the decisions for acceleration, deceleration, all those kind of things. Which lanes you're in based on the left lane loafers, right? They're not choosing the lane based on, I'm in this lane because I'm getting on or getting off, otherwise I need to be here. And so I think that's where it makes a difference, is that human element that, yeah, we have, I Google Map my way everywhere. I Google Map my way home, which is ridiculous. I know how to get there, right? I've done it before, but I do it. But I think that's where the difference is it takes out that human element in the traffic standpoint. I also think another one of the big solutions is going to be, people either not having to be in the office, working remotely. And so, there are places that there's always traffic in Southern California, something like that. But in Utah, right, unless you have to be somewhere between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. or 4 p.m. and 6 p.m., traffic really, or if there's construction or something, it's really not as much of an issue. And so if it's flexible work schedules or school schedules, if it's being able to work remotely, I think there are some other solutions that maybe aren't traditionally related to traffic management that are part of the solution.
If a deer jumps in front of an autonomous vehicle going at 70 miles an hour, you ain't going to cloud back. You're going to have to do that computation.
No, there absolutely still has to be some onboard sensors and computing that has to happen.
Are you guys doing that? Are you doing the onboard computation?
We're not. We're not really doing any of that I just talked about. I just think that those are the solutions. Yeah, it's more of an opinion thing than what I'm doing.
How much work at Siemens, or have you had visibility to the body of work that's being done with schools, specifically in relation to emergency preparedness for school autonomy and energy consumption and monitoring?
So that's somewhere where Siemens is actually really strong. So especially around energy consumption and monitoring, we've got a whole business that's built around going in and either helping design a system that's efficient from the beginning, as well as keeping it efficient, and going into those buildings and looking for opportunities to make existing buildings that are making those existing buildings more efficient. And then also from like a life safety perspective, that's actually a huge deal right now, whether it's mass shooters, whether it's a fire, whether it's whatever. But so Siemens also does a lot of mass notification, and whether that's digital signage, whether that's over the speaker system to make sure people go the way that they need to go and kind of avoid some of the issues that come from that. And that's actually more of a core business of Siemens that they've been doing for a long time. So.
How are you, or how are some of the cities you've interacted with dealing with the privacy concerns of citizens around all this?
It's a huge deal, right? So, I think, and I don't know whether this is true or not, I think people know when you move into like a connected development, you're giving up some privacy, right? That's part. There's going to be cameras everywhere. There's going to be monitoring everywhere. We do a lot of work in hospitals, so HIPAA becomes an issue as well. I think on that you're never really going to get away from it. The information is out there. I think making sure that information isn't used. There are cybersecurity issues and whatever that you've got to maintain that information securely enough that it doesn't become out there for public consumption. But we have, so for instance, we have a product, we call it Enlighted. And so it's basically a smart ceiling, smart lighting fixtures that have the sensors built in that we've got it set up in our office in Buffalo Grove, Illinois, where people actually have like a Bluetooth low energy beacon that they wear, and you can watch where they go all day, right? Which I wouldn't sign up for that. It's like, Taft hasn't moved for like an hour and a half. But it's like, if you're specifically identifying a single person, it's like you can see their name on the map. That's one thing. But without those being tied to a specific person, you can see heat maps of what areas of a building are being more utilized, what areas are not being utilized. And from a space optimization standpoint, it becomes a big deal. We've actually had customers that have downsized their offices significantly when they realized, hey, we don't need all this space. There's a ton of this space that isn't being used. We need more of this type of space. We need more co-working space. We need more whatever it is, being able to optimize what they're using. But it's a concern, right? And then all the time, it's like, you look at your, the ads pop up on Facebook, and it's like, I talked to my friend about that yesterday. I didn't Google that. I didn't put that out into the universe any other way than talking to my friend.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, but it's also really convenient. It's like, oh, I was talking about that to my friend. Yeah, I do want one of those, right? Like, it's super convenient. So you're giving up a little bit of privacy for some convenience, and that's it. That's obviously a microcosm of what you're talking about, but it's what we're talking about. All right. Well, thank you, everybody.